And I really want to extend a special thank you to REACH for organizing this event and offering us this opportunity to come and talk about this important topic, which is family recovery. We are PEP Society, and we support families who are impacted by addiction. And so the first thing I'd like to do is share a video with you. Oh, pardon me, I'll pause that and say I'll share a quote first, which is that addiction deceives, manipulates, lies, steals. It is singularly focused, it's complicated. And this is from one of our PEP participants. And they go on to say, I was ignorant of the depth and grasp it could have on both the individual and the family. And that's really what I'm talking about here today. So, hello, I'm Debbie. I am the Program and Communications Manager with PEP Society. I support the development and the innovation of our programs that supports families Alberta-wide. I'm also one of the facilitators with our family recovery groups. So why do we need an organization like PEP? Well, addiction stresses families to the breaking point, impacting the stability of the home, the family's unity, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, finances, and overall family dynamics. And PEP is here to help with that dynamic. So tonight we'll be exploring these two questions, which is what is family recovery and why does it matter? And to begin that exploration, I'm going to share a video where we will hear directly from the voices of those who have walked the path of addiction alongside their loved ones. Their story is a poignant reminder of the resilience, courage, and hope that define the journey of family recovery.
Neither of us had kind of any clue of how severe his addiction had gotten to that point. We are victims of our own child. We had put a restraining order against our own kid. There was a massive amount of shame, and I just felt like it was my fault.
Our boy got into some trouble, and it was pretty severe. And we suspected some substance abuse, some drug use.
It was so overwhelming for me. All of our friends' kids are doing well and all of these things. So you just kind of say, yeah, the kids are good. And it just builds up. It takes over your life.
So we help families who don't know where to go, who are looking for knowledge, support, and even hope in the midst of supporting a loved one who has substance abuse or addiction issues.
There isn't that many resources for the loved ones that are going through this, and it's equally saddening. That's what PEP's really good for. They offer a meaningful connection. They create understanding through the education that comes, and it's really meaningful when you can be in a group where you're not the only one.
The very first meeting, the first few people that spoke, I was just overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, this isn't just us. This is a community of people that are going through the same struggles we are. These people feel the same way I feel.
Can you imagine a parent or a sibling or a grandparent watching their loved one get tangled up in the addiction? How do you unravel that? That can be one of the toughest parts of stepping into that room for the first time.
I learned really quickly after the second meeting. I see all these people laughing, joking, going on vacations, having a good time and coping and putting boundaries in place for themselves. And I remember saying it to Jackie on the way home. We're gonna get there. Like we're not gonna lose to this. So there was a realm of hope that you lived in pre-PEP. You believe you can will things to be better. You can will them away from addiction. It's just lying to yourself. And then the realm of hope that you began to live and learn during PEP. The real hope, learning the tools to manage and live and navigate through addiction. And that would be my hope for anybody. For any parent that enters that room, my hope is that you live well and understand that you can live well.
There's strength in numbers, and there's an abundance of support that's offered from whether it's the facilitators, the education, the other family members or loved ones or parents that come to the groups. It's just a cool concoction of just love. Yeah, there's lots of love within the group, yeah.
It was this massive weight off my shoulders once we found PEP and started down that road.
I've been empowered by so many good people, and we truly are empowered. We truly are free.
It's a pretty powerful video. So as we watch that video, we can consider what is family recovery from the perspective of this family. First of all, we heard them talk about a journey. For the person struggling with the addiction as well as the family, the couple talked about the massive amount of shame they held and the thinking that it was their fault. But through attending PEP, they experienced people laughing and talking about living. They spoke about coping. They talked about coping strategies and the importance of setting boundaries for themselves. And despite the challenges they faced, there was a resounding message: we're not going to lose to this. They discovered a realm of hope, a real hope, they said, where one could live and learn and not just survive, but thrive. And they spoke about learning new tools, how to live and manage the challenges of addiction. So recovery is a journey, it's coping, it's a realm of hope, it's learning tools. And most of all, they spoke about understanding that they could live well. Even in the midst of challenges they faced, they learned that they could be free. They remind us that even in the darkest times, even when it's really hard, that there is hope. So before we go into the further exploration of recovery, let's take a step back and understand addiction. Addiction is a journey that no one wants to experience. No matter what they, as the family member, learn along the way, they didn't voluntarily choose this path. And nor did their loved one. Substance use or certain behaviors may start as a choice, but when the illness of addiction settles in, choice is virtually gone. And it takes many prisoners. It takes as many people along for the ride as possible. And so here's some science on addiction from the American Society of Addiction Medicine. So it's a little bit of a lengthy definition, but we'll work through it together. And the first part is, addiction is a treatable chronic medical disease involving complex interactions among brain circuits, genetics, the environment, and an individual's life experience. People with addiction use substances or engage in behaviors that become compulsive and often continue despite harmful consequences. So you can see that I underlined some terms there. And these are the kinds of concepts that we unpack in our family recovery groups with the families. They're important concepts to understand. Prevention efforts and treatment approaches for addiction are generally as successful as those for other chronic diseases. So herein lies the hope. Did you know that it's treatable? And that in fact, many, many people get well. And this is part of the recovery journey for families, is growing in their knowledge and understanding about what they're dealing with. Like threads woven tightly together, addiction binds families in a web of challenges and struggles. It's complex, and we need to recognize that it reverberates through the entire family system, in fact, the entire community system. Yet within this entanglement, there can also be unity and resilience. So when a family member is addicted or struggles with substance use, the entire family is impacted, and they often find themselves on a unique journey of their own. So we'll explore that journey for a moment and use this road as a metaphor for the journey of addiction as well as recovery. And you can see that it's curvy, it's not straight, it doesn't have a defined beginning, it doesn't have a defined end. If I was better at graphic design, there'd be hills and some bumps along the road. So on one side, we see that there is the loved one's journey, the one with the addiction. And on the other side is the family one. And they run parallel in many ways, which is why we call it the parallel journey. It's a cyclical relationship in that they influence one another. And whether they want it or not, the moment that addiction parachutes into the family's life through their loved one, they find themselves on this journey. And they often don't know they're on their own journey. They're so focused on their loved one's side of the road. And so that's one of the things that we support them with, but it's an education, again, that they don't want. And while they're parallel, the journeys are separate. And at PEP, we focus on the family side and believe that there needs to be more done to bring awareness to the importance of family recovery programs. Because when families learn that they have their own path to forge and that change is actually in their own hands, they can start to make changes that will help get their lives back and may even influence their loved one to get well. This journey in one form or another tends to be ongoing, but people get better. We see it all the time. We see families get better all the time. And families benefit greatly when they recognize they have their own journey, and at PEP we support them along that road. So we've talked about addiction and the family journey, but really what are families recovering from? So in order for us to understand recovery, we need to understand the impact on families. So some relevant statistics, first of all, which is 20% of Canadians will experience an addiction or mental health illness each year. 71% of Canadians have been affected by a family member suffering from addiction. That is a huge number. That's 3/4 of the room. 38% of Canadians say they have an immediate family member in addiction, and 90% of those say they're living with their addicted loved one. So this can begin to paint the picture of the scale of what we're talking about here. And who are impacted? Who are we talking about here? Yes, of course, parents. We started as a parent group nearly 20 years ago. But we've come to see, of course, that grandparents are impacted. Siblings are impacted. Certainly young siblings, but also think of adult siblings who are concerned about their brother or sister, but now are also concerned about their parents. But really, it's anyone and everyone. Friends, co-workers, community members, ultimately anyone who's seeking support for someone they care about. Addiction can be like a storm that hits a family hard. There can be fights and it makes it hard to trust one another. Kids feel scared or are unsure about what's happening in the home. Sometimes important moments like birthdays and celebrations and holidays all get lost in the chaos. Money becomes tight. There might be legal problems. Families isolate due to shame. So relationships between family members get really tough, and it's hard for some folks to focus on their career, their jobs, while others might find that work is a welcome reprieve. Ultimately, family wellness becomes linked to their loved one's wellness. And there are many ways that this happens. They often focus on helping their loved ones so much that they forget about themselves. They're off the list. They might blame themselves. Often they blame themselves and try to fix things in unhealthy ways. And this can create that harmful cyclical relationship I spoke about earlier. Families yearn for their loved one to get better so that their life can return to some kind of normalcy. But there's a trap in that, because while it is partly true, if your loved one starts to seek recovery, your life does become less stressful. There's no more police knocking at the door. You're not getting those phone calls in the middle of the night. You're not having some of those chaotic behaviors, but it's not the whole picture, because families' anxieties don't necessarily go away. They shift focus to ensuring that their loved one stays well. And so even after their loved one may get better, there are still lingering emotional and mental impacts on the family that they're dealing with. We call them leftovers. And this is what the recovery process can help families with. Families find themselves supporting their loved ones in a variety of ways, and this will be by no means an exhaustive list, but they act as informal case managers, encouraging and supporting treatment, identifying, securing housing, arranging for income assistance. They're providing crisis management. They're taking those calls in the middle of the night. They're driving all over the city trying to find their loved one. They assist with system navigation. They're the ones doing exhaustive research. They're making phone calls. They advocate on behalf of their ill loved one. They monitor symptoms. They support treatment plans. They become some really great legal assistants. They're maintaining records. They're attending court dates. They're informing professionals, ensuring that their loved one is seen as a whole person. And of course, finally, they are coping with the many chaotic behaviors. And I want to stress that none of these are right or wrong. In fact, these are life or death situations for families that they're dealing with. And they do these and think about these things all day long. They're doing them off the side of their desks, or they're coping with it all night long and trying to go to work the next day. They're not going out for dinner. They're not attending lovely networking evenings. They're not pursuing their dreams. This is the way the illness takes over the lives of families. In fact, families continue to do this long after they need to. Why? This has become their new normal. They don't know how to return to anything different. Many people don't recognize that there's a need for family recovery. There's no thought about it, and very little knowledge on how addiction affects families, especially in the long term. The prevailing belief is get your sick person, your addicted person well, and then everything will just return to normal and be fine again. But we've now been discovering that's not the case. So take a moment to reflect on the people around you and consider the impact of addiction. Think about those statistics I shared earlier. How many families do you think in your community are impacted by this illness? In your workplace, in your friend circle? And if you think you have a number in mind, double it at least. Because as this image depicts, most are living in the shadows. They're not telling you how hard it is for them. They're not telling you they're going through it at all. They're not sharing on social media. They wear a mask at work. You're not being invited to their homes. Why? They don't want you to see the holes in their walls. This silent acknowledgement of the widespread influence of addiction is the first step to understanding why family recovery matters. So with that in mind, we'll explore the path back towards wellness for families, one that involves breaking free from that cyclical relationship and building healthier relationships with themselves and their loved ones. So what is recovery? It's a process of change which is embraced gradually, and it's characterized by continual growth and improvement in health and wellness. So when we're talking about change, what kind of change are we actually talking about? Well, it's unique to each family and individual. And at PEP, we support families in identifying for themselves what that would look like. It could be reintegrating into the community, going back to work. Many are on leaves of absences. It could be bringing back and protecting a sense of peace in their home. It really is unique for each person, but it's about gradually stepping back into their own wellness at their own pace, voluntarily, meaning we don't force this on them. It's at their own will. Ultimately, recovery is a process, not an event. An event starts and finishes, while a process is ongoing and evolving. It's something to be nurtured, something to be cared for, something to be valued, and something to be protected. When families affected by addiction receive support, it can positively impact the recovery journey of their loved one. When individuals take action in their own recovery, not their loved ones, in their own recovery, they become living examples of how to do life. And loved ones are influenced by the family journey, and this is another reason that family recovery matters. The family's most powerful tool to help their loved one is living their own life well. And I'll say that again. The family's most powerful tool to helping their loved one is living their own life well and returning to maintaining their own sense of health and well-being. At the end of our PEP meetings, we say change begins with me. And that's what we mean by that. Families don't stay in the tunnel of chaos. As I said, we see many get better. There are so many ways to crawl out, and PEP is one of those ways. So how can PEP help? Firstly, our mission is to educate, provide education, innovative programming, support, and hope for individuals or families dealing with or concerned with substance use and addiction. So in other words, we provide education around addiction, we support them, we provide a safe place for them to share what's going on for them. We'd really love to see families come a little earlier when they're just in that concerned phase. They don't quite know what they're dealing with yet. Come to our PEP group and talk to us, ask them questions, learn from one another. And of course, we also commit to improving effective, accessible treatment and positive outcomes. So all of our programs are led by professional facilitators trained in addiction and recovery, trauma-informed care, and knowledge-based experience. Our family recovery meetings is our foundational program. It has two parts. The first part is simplified education in addiction and recovery. And then the second part is what we call the go-around, and that's where we have strong support, group sharing, empowerment, and hope for one another. Our meeting frequency is every Tuesday and Wednesday and bi-weekly on Thursdays. We have 3 in-person locations, Sherwood Park, Southside, and we have a virtual, St. Albert, and then we have a virtual every week. So you can go to pepsociety.ca to find the specific addresses, the dates, the locations, and Zoom link, and all of that good stuff. Another program I just want to draw your attention to is our toll-free family support line. It's professionally managed and operates 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, including weekends and holidays. It's not a crisis line, but whether you need someone to listen or bounce some ideas off of, or guidance to navigating all the resources in our crazy system, or just someone to talk to, we're here for you. And that phone number is also found on pepsociety.ca. I'd also like to share with you an important event we have coming up. It's on just next week, on April 23rd. It's called Not in My Family Pep Talks Recovery. It's at Sunrise Community Church from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. It's free, no registration required. Please come early, there might be limited seating. But it's an educational forum, and it's emceed by Eileen Bell. And will feature opening remarks by the Honourable Dan Williams, Minister of Mental Health and Addiction for the Government of Alberta. There'll be a discussion panel by Nathaniel Day, Rob Tangway. We'll have our lovely couple from the video there. And we'll have someone from our restorative justice component as well. Marshall Smith, who is the Chief of Staff for the Premier, will also be speaking about his lived experience. And all of this will be followed by a Q&A session. So it's a really great opportunity for the community to come together and talk to some experts and get some questions answered. Finally, I'll just share some ways to contact us. info@pepsociety.ca is our email. You can get on our newsletter list. It's a great quarterly newsletter. We've got some out on the table back there if you want to grab one. Our support line there, of course, our head office number if you want to speak to our executive director and ask some specific questions. And of course, you're not going to remember any of that, so pepsociety.ca is where you're going to find all of that information. So as we conclude, I want to emphasize the importance of reaching out for help if you know someone who's struggling. Whether it's a family member, a friend, or someone in your community, know that some support is available. The challenges of addiction are not something to face alone. Together we can break the silence and the stigma surrounding addiction and extend a hand of compassion and support to one another. And so if there's someone that you know, please refer them to us. And ultimately, there is strength in numbers and power and knowledge. So thank you very much.